All right, welcome in everyone. Another edition of College Gamebreakers. It's been about a week since JD's been with me. Got him in for the West Coast Conference, so got to bring him in naturally for the Pac-12, and that's what we'll be dabbling in tonight in College Gamebreakers. Fourth live stream from the breakdown tonight, so we're really killing it on the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So make sure to check us out there. You heard everyone hype. It's starting to get late night, but that's the perfect time to start talking about the Pac-12. JD's got a nice college football pod to be recording later that you definitely should be checking out tomorrow when it hits the airwaves. But how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. It's March. It's one of the best times of the year. We got conference tourney action. We're going to have even more daytime basketball games to watch. It's fantastic. It's busy. Like you said, we're staying busy at the breakdown, but it's busy and it's full of awesome entertainment as well. So it couldn't be better, man.
So you got over the Pacific loss all right?
Yeah. That was bad. That was not good. I just chalked it up to stupidity and moved on.
Yeah, that was a quick one where you could kind of turn it off right away, but your fandom keeps you watching, but you kind of just knew from the jump, like, oof, this isn't looking too hot. But in the Pac-12, you got the regular season winners in Oregon, so they'll be taking home your top spot. Vegas, baby, this is the third conference tournament that they're hosting, so let's hope everything stays well in Vegas, but it's got to be rough where the players are getting to stay in the sweet hotels but can absolutely do nothing because that's like the biggest temptation just sitting at you right there. But the Arizona boys will be happy because they aren't competing in it, so they don't have to deal with that temptation. They're off doing whatever they want to do. They ruled themselves ineligible for this postseason, so we got 11 teams here where it's a little strange. You have one team doesn't have the one playing game or top four have a bye, so that's kind of where there's not that one playing game there. But JD, we have 4 bids in the Pac-12. I kind of have issues with it, but the 4 teams are kind of deserving because I was very upset with the level of Pac-12. There's a lot of hype where I thought 3 teams could potentially finish in the top 25. We have Oregon, who's kind of on the cusp with USC there, but I mean, I'm not sold that we could get a deep winner here. There was a point at the season where I thought there could only be 2 teams making it from the conference, but it looks like we'll get 4. What do you think about this conference overall?
Yeah, I definitely think it's 4 teams that are getting in. I'm a little disappointed as well. I like to watch West Coast hoops. I'm a pretty big West Coast watcher from anything being on the West Coast. So I figured why not support it? And plus, it's just on later. But I usually watch a lot of Pac-12 hoops, and I mean, there just wasn't that much reason to tune in. I thought if Stanford had a better season, this could have looked like a much stronger conference with Zaire Williams. So I was really looking forward to Stanford. And I mean, they just had a mess of a season. A lot of injuries. Can't blame them too much. And I mean, Oregon's gotten going lately. So I think that's been really good for the conference. And I think, with the Mobley brothers at USC, it was nice to see USC finally do something with talent. So there were a few positives, but in general, I mean, especially with Arizona being ineligible and them just kind of wilting near the end of the season, they weren't terrible, but just kind of wilting. It just felt like it was a little bit more disappointment than you would like.
Yeah, that's where Sean Miller seems like he's going to keep his job there, but a lot of people are calling for him out. You could see both Miller brothers leaving in the same year, which would be very strange, but I don't know. I guess if Arizona, if you're going to rule yourself ineligible, this is the one to do it. Will Wazoo play is a good one as well. It seems like they're scheduled and slated to, but they did have their last game of the season get canceled due to a COVID outbreak within their program. So you could see an auto buy there. This is neutral site, JD. So you think there could be some advantages or disadvantages with this?
Yeah, I actually think that's really big. When looking at this conference as a whole, I'm looking like, are there over-unders? Is there anything that's sticking out? The main thing that stuck out to me is that there was a huge home court advantage for a lot of teams. Some pretty large dichotomy between home and road splits. I'll just go ahead and read some of these records. But at the top of the conference, you had Oregon was 11-2 at home, but they were also good away. And you had USC 13-2 at home, but were also very good away. So it's like, okay, those teams are, they're good at both. But other than that, those were the only 2 teams that really stood out as good at both home and away. Below them, you had Colorado, notorious for being a very tough place to play. I'll never bet Colorado neutral or on the road pretty much. It's just a no-go in football or basketball, just a general rule. And yeah, they were 11-1 at home, but they were even away. They were 6-6 away. UCLA, same thing. They were 11-1 at home, and they were only 5-5 away. And those are supposed to be the top teams in the conference. And then under them, you have Arizona, who's not competing here, but they were also 12-4 at home and 5-4 away. So that was a thing that stuck out to me, especially in a year where you have a lot of people saying, home court advantage doesn't really mean much. Home field advantage doesn't mean much. It pretty clearly meant something here. So when I'm looking at neutral, I'm definitely favoring the teams that have proven that they can play away. USC and Oregon have proven they can do that. No other team in this conference has proven to me they can consistently win multiple games in a row on the road or in a neutral setting like we have here.
Yeah, Colorado, I think when I look, and I love dabbling into home court advantage numbers that you can work into a model, and the football and basketball both rank the highest, and it's almost like a 3.53 spread advantage just for being up in that elevation. So Colorado is definitely a team that, with it being neutral, I don't think it being paying off well. But at the same time, when everyone's neutral, and sure, there's no advantage, but the road traveling is definitely weird this year. I just don't think any team really sticks out that far from the pack, where you have Oregon at 14-4 as the top team in the conference. Then you had UCLA at 13-6. So you basically had a 1 or 2 game split that separated this top 4. So maybe you're who does better neutrally and on the road is definitely a good way to dissect it, where with the top teams, you can say some defense is better than their offenses, but by and large, they're the same team makeup because there's only 3 teams that play with any bit of tempo in this conference, and that's Washington. Don't touch them with a 50-foot stick. You have Arizona State, where they just had a terrible draw, so don't think you should touch them, because I try to look for a team that might play different tempo style, but you'll be seeing a bunch of 130s, maybe 140s with the fouling coming into advantage here with the unders. And I just am not rushing to the window right now to play any unders, especially when these kids will foul to the death of them at this point of the season.
Yeah, no, I just want to support what you said about no team really stands out here. If there's a team that really stands out there, I'm going to look more into the matchups, more into that. But when it's pretty clear you have a pretty even conference, I don't know if I want to say even, but, where there's not much separating the teams near the top, I just want to emphasize that's pretty much what I'm looking at here, is things like how they performed on the road and individual matchups, what that looked like when one team was on the road as opposed to the other.
All right, so FanDuel, nice enough to have some conference odds out for this one since it is a bigger conference. You got USC at plus 200. You got Rado at plus 220. Get to that one in a little bit. Oregon at plus 310. UCLA at plus 500. Then everyone else, very considered a long shot, plus 1,500 or more. Before we get into the odds here, you're a guy that likes the numbers with me. Is someone who's 300-1, it's a different conference, would they be considered a long shot? Because I saw someone clouting on Twitter that they picked a 301 and they made it to the conference finals. And I was like, as their dark horse or the long shot, I'm just like, really, dude? Is a plus 300 really a long shot?
No, I don't know what the cutoff for long shot is, but I would guess somewhere around 600 is where I'd put it.
Yeah, so if you're plus 300, especially, I don't know. Unless you have someone who's sitting at minus 200 in the conference, that's the only way you can consider it. But just got to get on the Twitter tout sometimes, because that's always fun to roast. But maybe a team you want to roast, or a team that you just don't want to touch here. Who are you instantly crossing off looking at these odds?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'm not really looking much at anybody outside the top 4. I'm pretty much crossing off most people outside the top 4. The odds that stand out, Arizona State at plus 5,000, seems really weird for a 5 seed. Once you dig into it, I definitely am picking Oregon. I don't really give Oregon State. I mean, obviously they have a shot, but so that stands out. I'm not playing them, but those odds, I don't even think playing it makes sense, because their first game, well, I guess you could play them and then you could get out if they do beat UCLA in game 1. So that one, the odds don't seem quite right. If they beat UCLA, which we were talking about this beforehand, they definitely have a shot to beat UCLA. I think those odds stand out. I'm personally not playing it because I'm not picking them, but the odds definitely make sense. Other than that, I mean, Stanford has to win too many games, in my opinion. But if they get Oscar De Silva back, that stands out. But yeah, that's about it. I'm pretty much crossing everybody off outside the top 4 because just no team has shown any consistency in this conference to me.
Yeah, so that's where you alluded to it, where you got to dig into the matchups, because if you think Oregon holds an advantage over UCLA, or if you think USC holds a significant advantage over Colorado, that's the only way you could talk me into backing the top 2, because they'll be listed at juicy odds in both of them. So you might get a minus or a plus 200 to plus 250 money line parlay if you kept it open. So that's where I kind of look at it, where you parlay the odds together, because if you just did that open money line with USC the whole time, who are the odds on favorite plus 200, you're getting better odds by just taking a open money line parlay the whole time if you want to get creative there. Teams I'm crossing off wise, I just can't back the team at plus 200 to do it, because just from that reasoning, it doesn't make any sense. I also want to cross off Colorado as well, odds wise, not skill wise, because I was looking at this one odds wise because you gave it the home and road splits. They are just a completely different team out there, and they do play a good style, and I'm never going to hate on McKinley Wright because he's probably been one of my favorite players when I do tune into the Pac-12, that he's someone I got to watch. But the foul lines, where they scare me is their fouling rate on defense is a little bit concerning, and they have slow starts. But I think that's just given where they're not a good away team to start it off. So I just wouldn't want to touch, even though they're sitting at plus 220. I don't know why the bottom team has the better odds on FanDuel here to come out on top, because that just doesn't make sense. So I'd look to target the top.
Yeah, no, the odds certainly don't make sense. Like when you're looking at this, they don't make any sense to me at all. And I'm somebody that thinks Oregon's the best team in this conference, and I think they're going to win, and they have the third best odds. But even if you aren't of that opinion, I don't see how you could have two teams that are going to be matched up in the same side of the bracket, both be right around plus 200, whereas the team on the other side is plus 300. It's definitely off. And even Oregon State, like I said, I'm not picking them, but even they're way too high. Like even that doesn't make sense. They win one game and you can beat the book by getting out. So yeah. There are opportunities here.
Yeah, the Oregon State, I think you might be the only person not advocating to go after it, but at the plus 5,000, I think they'll take any type of $10 to $20 bet, because I don't think anyone's laying down some big coin on that.
No.
So let's break down some of the top teams that we think quick hitters for who we think can win it. And I just put a big in the doc because I can make a case for everyone who can win it, and I can make a case against it for each reason, because I guess you got to start off with the champs in Oregon, where they nail threes at a 39.4% rate. So anytime you did that consistently over a season, that's solely in conference play, that just instills a lot of confidence in me. The transfers of LJ Figueroa, you have Umawari, they're just solidly starting five-wise, maybe not depth-wise my favorite team, but starting-wise, I like that 5 to go up against anyone. Sure, maybe they don't have the pure size that USC does, but I like the way that they can match up against the guards anywhere else. The only thing that does concern me with them is they allow you to score. They don't lock down on defense like the other Colorado, USC, and UCLA is more prone to. So Oregon's going to get you in a little bit more high-scoring contest where you live and die by the three. So that's where at plus 310, that could be the only reasoning why, is they just don't rely on the defense, and they think a team that is just a little bit better, but like we said, not much separates them. What are your thoughts on the Ducks?
No, I thought the exact same thing. Like they're definitely my pick to win it. I do think they're the best team in the conference, but I am not like 100% certain on it. And the reason I'm looking at their numbers was because I saw that Haslametrics has them as the 94th best team defensively. And I was a little taken back by that. Even though they have been playing much better lately and they've had some injuries, they had some transfers. And I mean, that takes a while to get together. And Dana Altman, I think, is one of the best coaches in college basketball. We see this every year with Dana Altman. Once it gets to this time of year, I should have just been taking them against the spread in their last 5 games. I bet them against USC. and they got creamed. Well, they ended up making a comeback, but they were like down 19-2 to start the game, because that happens when I bet teams. It happens to Pacific against Santa Clara. And I hopped off. I should have been keeping betting them. I should bet them every single game in this tournament. And I might, because Dana Altman in March is different. However, the reason I do have the pause, usually the recipe with Dana Altman and the Ducks, they play very good defense, and we've seen them have that lead ball handler to get them through. This time, their team is kind of a weird makeup. Like you said, it's all starters. The bench isn't quite there. And they're like a lot of winged players, which is good in modern basketball. It's good to have a lot of wings, a lot of switchability. But once their big man went down, forget his name, bigger group, Conte, I think. Once he went down, they just haven't had the big bodies to step up. They don't have a rim protector. It puts a lot on the guys. It puts a lot on the starters. They have to step up. They have to play big. They can't get in foul trouble. They've shown enough to me to prove that they can play that style, but I think the margins are a little bit closer than you would like. I think they've won 4 straight games since that USC loss. Even though they've been playing well, you still see teams are scoring points. I think UCLA just put up 80 points against them. So, I mean, it's going to be tough. If the spreads are going up, which they might be, the bookmakers might realize Dana Altman's a bet-on coach. They're smart. If the spreads are getting a little inflated, I mean, teams could backdoor it. Teams could keep it close. So while that's definitely my pick to win this, I'm not as confident as I would like to be once I took a deeper look into the numbers.
Yeah, once you said they had a bunch of like wing forwards and wing guards, I was like, yeah, they definitely do. So I looked up their heights. They have 4 dudes listed at 6'6" that gets 64 minutes, and Duarte, Umari, Figueroa, and Eric Williams Jr. That's nuts. And yeah, they've won 10 of their last 11. So you got very unlucky where USC was the only blimp they had in there. So with college basketball, you got to have that short-term memory. But that regression monster is very due for Oregon, where they've shot, I think it's 48% in every game. And their past 3 from deep, where they went 12 for 22, 8 for 17, then 15 for 23. So they're hot from deep right now. And that's just a little bit scary, where I don't want to back on the team that's cold going in there, but I want to see the team that's exceeded and put up their best 3-point numbers of the entire season going right into it, because the contrarian in me just says they're due to get cold for a game. Hopefully it comes in their first round matchup, because I think that's one where they can afford to get a little cold, but not too freezing.
Yeah. They're, not to take too long on Oregon, but they're they're one of those teams, like when it's not going well, when the shots aren't falling, they're not going to look good, because they got a bunch of wing players. They're just kind of standing around. They're not going to look like they're locking down defensively, even if it's low scoring. So yeah, they kind of remind me of a few years ago when we had that Nevada team who had the Martin twins, and they had Caroline down low, who was a good big man, but not very tall. I think he was like 6'6", 6'7". And like the margins were super thin. Like I think they almost lost their first round game. It took a lot of comebacks. They ended up hitting some crazy threes, but like when the shots weren't falling, they don't look like a good team. When the shots fall, they look great. And I know it's basketball. It's easy to say that, but yeah, it's just going to come down to whether they hit them or not.
At least we don't have to look at that court, because I don't enjoy watching a bunch of games on that court. It's a little bit of an eyesore. Yeah. USC. Quick hitters on these guys. That loss to Utah, kind of how your USC to Oregon loss resonates. I didn't have cash behind this one, but a 10-point loss shorts at Utah. We talked about the splits. That one kind of sticks in my mind, but they did come off a game at Colorado, so that's the 2 toughest road contests you can play back-to-back. I just have to look for that going forward. With the team has a road split in the Pac-12 where you have those teams back-to-back, just fade them both nights. And if they lose the first night, second night, they're not coming out. But you got Mobley and Edey. Past that, sure, you have or Evan Mobley, because you have the other Mobley. I'm just not sold on anyone in this roster that makes me feel any bit. Peterson's all right. White's nothing impressive. And they just kind of have a rotating cast after that, where if Edey doesn't get it going and dominate the inside, where granted, he's done that in majority of the games, but he's struggled to break. He's on this 11 to 13 point break where he was getting 20 in most games beforehand. So I don't know if teams are finally putting in different matchups against him, if he's finally just starting to hit the legs, because it is his freshman year. Just doesn't seem like a good time for him to be cooling off. But this defense, they have it ranked, or Ken Palm has them ranked as the top one in the conference. So if you're looking for a team to back on defense where Oregon, that's their biggest weak point, and if you think they can get past Rado, USC does hold some value, but I'm not rushing to the door for them.
Yeah, to me, it comes down to USC versus Oregon, and I think it's razor thin, like we talked about. They're not exactly a team I can trust because, like you said, they're not deep. And Mobley is a fantastic, fantastic player. He's amazing, but he's not exactly a guy like you can count on to go get you a bucket necessarily. Like he can against most teams, but when it really comes down to it, March, that's not exactly his game. He's a super well-rounded player, but he's still developing that offensive talent. So I think a lot of it comes down to Edey. Like when he's hitting shots, when he's great, I mean, there's a lot on Edey's shoulders, and he's been one of the stories of this conference, to be honest. He's one of the players that impressed me the most. But there's a lot on his shoulders. He has a cold shooting night. I mean, it could be really low scoring. So I might potentially be targeting some unders with him in this conference tournament.
Any quick thoughts on Enfield? Because one, he ruined Dunk City, brought him to relevancy, left them right away once he got the big boy job. I mean, can't complain for him there, but he's made the tourney twice. This will be his third year. Sure, you knock one off the coaching span with the COVID year where they're probably going to make it at 22-9, but he's been there since 2014. I don't think he's done what fans of USC wanted him to do, even though he has rattled off a decent amount of 21 seasons there.
Yeah, I do want to give him his props because he's kind of become a joke, right? He gets a lot of talent and he doesn't really do much with it. The Florida Gulf Coast years were great, but that was a long time in the rearview mirror. Like the way this program's recruiting, they should be getting something out of it. And so I'm going to give him his props. He got something out of it. I think this would be very, very big for them if they won the conference tournament. Like I feel like if they just bow out, if they lose to Colorado or, if they lose unimpressively any step along the way, I want to give him props. How much props can I really give him when, what they have? They had a good year, but they had one of the best players in college basketball, and they haven't really developed anything else on the roster, like we're saying, except they happen to have a generational talent in Mobley. So I guess I'll give him his props, but what happens after Mobley leaves? I'm still not super impressed with what's on this roster after that.
Well, I guess not culture shock or tempo shock for USC. Same thing's happening with UCLA because Enfield, he's made that team go snail pace. They used to be up and down the court, and Cronin's doing the same thing in UCLA. This is probably going to be the team we spend the quickest hit on because Cronin, he was a team where I thought you could buy into him late, let him set that defense up there. Second year in the program, so he's got 1 year of his guys and not the ideal year to get them there. But dropping to Colorado, Oregon, USC, sure, USC was on the buzzer, but thank you because I had a +3 for UCLA. So was it's the best feeling in sports where you root for the team for 39 minutes and 59 seconds. Then for that last second, you're screaming against them. They recovered against the Chris Smith injury pretty well, which seemed to be a big hit for them. And Steven alluded to this on one of our Saturday streams where Johnny Juzang has been the biggest piece for them coming in there because I do not like Jamie Vasquez Jr.'s game whatsoever. But they're balanced on both sides of the ball where the defense of Mick Cronin's actually a little bit weaker here. So what are your thoughts on the Bruins for a quick hitter?
Yeah, I don't have a lot of thoughts on UCLA. They're a good team. They're kind of a weird team. It's the thing with Mick Cronin. Like, his teams are just weird, man. They're usually not super eye-pleasing. I guess Tiger Campbell helps that from a watchability standpoint. But, they're just not crazy impressive to me. I think it's easy to count them out when I'm looking at this bracket. But at the same time, the margins are pretty thin. So, they're tough. It's Mick Cronin. I don't like going against Mick Cronin, but I don't really back him either. He's just kind of one of those weird coaches that's really hard for me to tell how his team's going to perform day to day. I think I more trust him than I distrust him, I guess is what I'll say.
Yep, and Chuck agrees with the 4 squads that we're hitting on are ones that he thinks are going to be in there. And Rado, I don't think we need to spend too much more time on them just because we've already hit on them a little bit with their splits. McKinley Wright, awesome to watch, but let's get into our long shots. Any long shots from you, or are you just going to sit this one out?
Yeah, the team you have to mention when you're looking at long shots, Arizona State, and Stanford are the two that stick out when you're looking at teams that would have to win. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4 games to win it all. I mean, Arizona State's really talented, but it's always possible. Of course, it's possible. They got Remy Martin. They have the guards. They could get hot, but in a year like this, where if it just hasn't clicked by now, it probably won't happen. I'm not gonna really bank on it or anything, but I do think it's worth mentioning. This probably would be a play where I'd be looking for Arizona State as an upset because they played pretty well against the non-top teams, and then the top teams knocked them off. But in their last game of the season, they got absolutely manhandled by Utah, a not great Utah team without Ryland Jones, and Utah beat them 98-59. So I don't really know how I can be trusting Arizona State. They're good enough; they could absolutely keep it close with anybody. I would not be shocked. So I think they're going to handle Wazoo if that game gets played. I feel pretty good about that. That might be a bet for me. I think they could keep it close with Oregon. Like if that spread's really inflated, like I said, I don't really trust Oregon to cover a big spread. I'll definitely cover them with any short spread. So if that's close, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if that would happen there.
Can't knock those two just because it's with the talent discrepancy. It's not much. Chuck rattled off everyone that could potentially go there, but he likes Oregon State as his sleeper. I was about to say, if we pick the whole board, you got to get one there. And one team he didn't allude to is, I think, Utah. Utah's the team that I think could be a potential long shot just because with their odds current, and this is just solely where I want to get the piece at the plus 2,000, basically use that as your money line for the game against USC, since they just took them down 71-61, where then you start hedging it out a little bit earlier in the next 2 rounds. But I just think pure like one game spread there where you think it's potentially good on the other teams. I think if you can get the plus 2,000 with Utah, and yeah, Ryland Jones might not be there. I just like the way Timmy Allen can go, and Coach K out west. He's been there before. He's gone through it. It's just terrible to see them be sitting at 9-7 to finish at 11-12. So that doesn't instill much confidence when they dropped it to Oregon State and Stanford in that route, both times to Oregon State, which is not too good for a look there, because I think that's a team, especially at home, Utah, you got to take your business. You got to take care of business there.
Yeah, I mean, they lost a game to Washington earlier this year. Like I said, they just mollywopped Arizona State, and things are looking good even without Ryland Jones. So on one hand, I want to trust the momentum, but on the other hand, like you lost to Washington earlier in the year. How does that possibly happen? So it's hard for me to get a gauge on this team. I do think I like what they have going with Timmy Allen. That's a tournament team, and with that coach, that's definitely a team I'd be looking more to back. A team like Stanford that's been kind of struggling lately, I'm not sure I could go there. Although if they get Oscar Da Silva back, I'd feel much more confident in that. But no, I think Utah, I mean, if that Arizona State game was legit, and I mean, it sounds like they're not getting Ryland Jones back. I'm a big Ryland Jones fan, if you can't tell. But with Timmy Allen and that coach, I think I'd be more looking at Utah personally.
So Da Silva, he's missed the past 3 games, and shocker, lost all 3. So
by a lot, they look awful.
And that's what happens when you lose that force. And USC, it's going to come to full fruition where if you don't have Da Silva and you're just going to let Mobley go wild because the depth of Stanford isn't that great on the inside, can definitely see that happening. But losing to Oregon State by 10 isn't a great sign, but you still held it within a few to Oregon. But that's that one game bounce after your guy goes out. You get to squad up, and then it shows its signs later on. So that's where, yeah, Stanford, I just have no faith in them that I don't think they can make a run. So you're upset to watch. We kind of alluded to, because I'm going to sprinkle a little bit on the Utah. It's just solely to ride it out. So I think Utah does get over USC. That would be my long shot to upset. And you think Stanford?
Yeah, kind of a caveat here. If Oscar Da Silva comes back and if Stanford looks good, they take care of business against California like they could. I don't know, Colorado in their first game, if Stanford comes back, if they're hot, but that's a huge if. If Oscar Silva's not back, if they don't look good in that game, I'm not taking them because they've looked bad for 3 straight games. But that's a team that has enough talent to knock off Colorado. You know, Colorado can keep some games, especially on the road, closer than they should be. So I'm going to say Stanford as the caveat. If Oscar Silva does not come back, they don't look good. I'd probably piggyback you on the Utah play.
All right. So now we can get into some of the stuff that Chuck's been alluding to. I think this is his third or fourth one he's tapped into. Pulled some good sleepers out with the VMI one and the SoCon tournament. So JD, as the guest, give me your final four. Any way you want to tell me how they get there, if you just want to rattle them off, who do you have there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be super bland, and I know this isn't a super popular opinion, but I'm definitely going Oregon. I'm going to say they're going to match up against UCLA. I think Oregon State's one of the weaker 5 seeds we have seen in a while. They're 5 seed because Arizona's not there. Their resume does not impress me. Ethan Thompson, sure, can put up a big game, but I definitely trust Mick Cronin more there. So I'm going to go Oregon against UCLA there. And then I'm going to say Colorado doesn't get upset. I do trust them enough. I like the stat Chuck brought up. They're good defensively, and they're the number 1 free throw shooting team in the country. So I think that's going to be enough to have them stave off some close upset attempts. So I'm going to say they go up against USC there. And I'm just going to say that the 2 most impressive teams I've seen this year. I've been most impressed when I've watched Oregon and USC. So I'm going to take them to go to the finals there.
Yeah, so I definitely have Oregon advancing. I alluded to this to JD pre-stream. I think I've scratched out pen and paper my UCLA and Oregon State pick like 6 times at this point. So I'm just going to roll with Oregon State and fade the colder UCLA team there. Not much confidence in that one because when I've gone against UCLA, other than the first game of the season, it's gone against me more than it has for me. So take that one with a grain of salt there. Even though I do like Utah as my long shot, they are a long shot for the reason. I do think Mobley could end up being too much. Going to be pulling for Utah the whole time, but my brain just tells me you have to go USC. And that's where your Stanford pick has, and if De Silva comes back, that has me wanting to change moving Colorado out of this spot and putting Stanford there because De Silva is that much of a game changer, and Colorado on the road is that sketchy. So you've persuaded me with your reasoning. I'm going to pick Stanford to get past Colorado, ride your upset the watch there. On the top half, no way I'm picking Oregon State to beat Oregon. Just seems too easy at this point for Oregon. So I'll have them go there. And then I'm not going to ride less than fully health De Silva to think he can hang with Mobley. So I got USC. And even though I was planning on Enfield a little bit earlier, let's see him cut down the nets. And I think because they'll be getting points in this game, even though the odds would suggest pre-tournament they wouldn't be. But I think Oregon would be laying the points. And there's no way I'm laying points in the Pac-12 championship game, especially this season.
Yeah, the tough part here is we know, like in a conference like the Pac-12, there's going to be some upsets. But when you're looking at it, it's like, okay, I don't think Oregon's going to – I would be pretty surprised if Oregon gets upset. USC, like we mentioned, I wouldn't be shocked. In Colorado, I mean, if we're looking at upsets, I just think it's most likely it would happen in Colorado.
Yeah, that's the one that not everyone would eye up first because they see the good record. They think they're rolling this season, but your home away splits there just wrapped it up pretty well. Any final thoughts on the Pac-12? Yeah, hit me with it.
Yeah, one thing when I was looking at this, I was kind of surprised. Colorado is 2-0 against USC, and I'm pretty sure both Mobley's played in both of those games, and it wasn't like super close. Like they definitely took care of business against USC. They even won at USC, which I think was USC. They only had 1 or 2 losses at home, and Colorado showed it to them. So I'm really hoping Colorado just doesn't go out there and make me look like an idiot for putting too much into the home away. But in general, I think if you just trust home away, and I think in general, in the long run, that's going to play out.
Yeah, that first USC game was on New Year's Eve, so that just feels so long ago, especially with this season. But yeah, numbers show when you beat the team 2 times. Everyone likes to say it's hard to beat the team the 3rd time in a row, but I saw a college basketball dude throw up some stats, over 1,000 data points. The team that's won the first 2 is winning the 3rd one at a 71% clip. So I don't think it would look too foolish to be backing Rado here.
No, I almost always go for the 3rd team. That's one of my favorite angles to play. It's one I actually look for in conference tournaments. Like sometimes it'll be lines like it's an even game. I'm like, they played twice and the team won. Like if they have similar stats at all, if it wasn't fluky at all, I'll take that almost 100% of the time. So So we'll see if Colorado actually does take care of business. If Stanford gets Oscar De Silva back and Colorado just handles them easily, I'm not necessarily looking to fade them unless they get to the finals. Like from a betting standpoint, like yes, I am picking against them, but I don't think I would actually fade them against USC just because, like I said, they're 2-0 against USC, and it's pretty much a dead rule for me. Never bet against that.
Yep. And that is probably going to wrap it up for this episode. JD's got a nice college football pod, campus, breakdown sports pod. He can allude to what you guys could be catching to see because we still have some live viewers checking in right now. But you can follow us under our heads. Thank you, as usual, for checking out the Breakdown Sports. You're probably watching us on one of our live outlets, and I've said the name too many times, so you know what it is at this point. Tell me about the pod tonight. What can they be looking for on their earbuds tomorrow?
Yeah, it's a fun one. So we're a college football podcast, and it's the beginning of March, right? So we don't quite have spring games yet. It's really kind of a dead season. So we're having a little bit of fun with it. We're doing some trivia. We're doing a thing where you kind of wager how many points you want to. Tonight, I'm quizzing my co-host, Kevin, on all-time passing records. We'll see. He's from the South. He's a Texas fan, and there's a lot of Big 12 names and whatnot on here. And so we'll see if he actually knows his stuff or if he's just a phony and doesn't know anything about the Big 12. So, yeah, that'll be fun. Campus to Campus podcast. Go ahead and give me a follow over at YunkerCFB on Twitter.
Ooh, you got to hope he's just not tuning in to see when you're going to be done because he could just be loading up the Google machine real quick. But until next time, I got some more conference previews coming at you tomorrow. It is one of the best weeks in sports, followed by the next one right afterwards. We're watching the hoops at the Breakdown Sports. Tweet at us there. Tweet at us on their heads. And we'll catch you later.